The Empress Dowager has met an untimely demise, and the perpetrator remains elusive. The sole piece of evidence is a plum blossom hairpin embedded in her neck. There exist only two such hairpins throughout the entire capital. One belongs to my elder sister. The owner of the other is currently contemplating how to evade execution after suffocation and poisoning. 1. No one anticipated the demise of the Empress Dowager. She was a divine being, renowned throughout the realm. Logically, she was thought to be ageless and immortal. Yet today, at the hour of chin, when the palace maids delivered the morning tea, they discovered her lying in a pool of blood. When the palace dispatched individuals to investigate, I had only just finished conversing with Her Majesty the Empress and had left the palace for no more than half an hour. My sister had departed with her close friend, leaving me unaware of their whereabouts. I returned to my residence at a leisurely pace, intending to change out of my court attire. Suddenly, a throng of individuals burst into my abode, declaring, "The daughter of the Minister of Revenue, Yan Junling, you are accused of murdering the Empress Dowager. You are hereby detained in the dungeons, awaiting your fate." Before I could utter a word, I was roughly dragged away. It was only later that I learned of the circumstances surrounding the Empress Dowager's death. A hairpin had been thrust into her neck. It was murder. Yet I was perplexed. How could I be implicated in her death? I did not even visit Shokong Palace today. The jailer forcefully shoved me to the ground, retorting, "The hairpin embedded in her neck is a plum blossom pin crafted from hibiscus jade. Do you still wish to argue?" I was momentarily stunned. Hibiscus jade is rare, and a high-quality hibiscus jade pin must be custom-made. In the entire capital, only 2 plum blossom pins of hibiscus jade exist. One was gifted to my sister, Yan Junqin. The other, if nothing unforeseen occurred, should still be resting in my cosmetics box. 2. The prison was dim, devoid of daylight. I could not discern how much time had passed when a figure entered. I could not see his face as my attention was fixated on the tray he held. Upon it rested a delicate cup. A sudden wave of terror consumed me, rendering me immobile. I lifted my gaze, attempting to retreat as much as possible. "What do you intend to do?" The voice of my interlocutor was devoid of emotion, chillingly cold. "There is an edict from above. The suspect is to be executed on the spot." My blood ran cold in an instant. Before I could protest, the individual seized my chin. Poisonous wine was forced down my throat, and it acted immediately. My entire body felt as though it were ablaze. I extended my hand, desperate to expel the poison. Yet, my strength rapidly drained away. I collapsed to the ground, sliding inch by inch downward. Only one thought remained. It hurt immensely. 3. Everything became a haze. The heavens and earth exchanged places. My suspended hand suddenly regained strength. Without thinking, I plunged it down my throat. After gagging 3 times, it dawned on me. I was still alive. What was happening? I glanced at my attire, meticulously arranged. Was this a dream? Or had I returned to the moments before my arrest? In the next instant, another group of individuals stormed in. "The daughter of the Minister of Revenue, Yan Junling, you are accused of murdering the Empress Dowager. You are hereby detained in the dungeons, awaiting your fate." I recited silently to myself, word for word. Once again, I was roughly dragged away. Therefore it was true. The good news was that I had come back to life once more. The bad news was that the figure with the tray re-entered. I was once again condemned to execution. My chin was once again gripped violently, and poisoned wine coursed through my body. Once more I felt the searing heat. Moments later, I regained my footing. This time, facing those who arrested me, I at least maintained my dignity. I shall walk on my own. But how could I avoid the inevitable outcome of death? The Grim Reaper with the tray approached again. This time, I stood tall and took the initiative. I am the legitimate daughter of the Minister's household. According to the laws of our dynasty, before executing a noble, a preliminary hearing must take place. Your actions defy the law. Are you not afraid of punishment? This time, the Grim Reaper disregarded the tray entirely. He seized me by the throat, lifting me effortlessly. A derisive laugh echoed above me. The law? What he says is the law. I felt my strength wane. The blood within my mind gradually cooled and congealed. I never anticipated that this time I would be choked to death. For the cycle of reincarnation commenced anew. and I gasped for breath. If I could not find a way to survive, then rebirth would merely serve as a cruel torment. I swiftly searched for any useful information. The man had stated that what he said was the law. This could only refer to the emperor. The Empress Dowager was not only a divine being, but also the emperor's biological mother. He was undoubtedly enraged. If he believed me to be the murderer, sparing me from 1,000 cuts would be a mercy. One must acknowledge that this Empress Dowager was no ordinary figure. Her surname was Yi, her given name Lingxi, the sole daughter of a former chancellor. Before she even reached maturity, a master divined her phoenix fate, declaring her to be of unparalleled nobility. Shortly after coming of age, without any engagement, she became pregnant. Even after a whole generation had passed, the tale was still recounted. That winter, 60 years ago, the winds and snow enveloped the world in a void. Empress Dowager Yi, clad in a thin white gown, prostrated herself step by step upon the altar. Behind her, butterflies danced, ascending to the heavens. She stood upon the altar, announcing to the world that she had felt the spirit of heaven and earth and was with child. That child was not the emperor, but rather the highly esteemed national master of today. The populace had once questioned Empress Dowager Yi's character. Yet, as time passed, everyone observed that both she and the national master possessed ageless beauty. Still, I could not fathom the truth. Empress Dowager Yi was known for her aloofness, yet was also remarkably tolerant. Logically, she should have had no enemies, let alone be murdered. Her death had now become my own demise. As I pondered a solution on my way home, a thought struck me: the plum blossom pin. I hurried back to my residence, donning a maid's outer garment for ease of movement. There was no need to rummage through drawers. The pink jade pin lay quietly on my vanity. Yes, I recalled seeing my sister wearing the plum blossom pin today, prompting me to remove my own. We had always been at odds, perpetually bickering. Now, this was the most crucial piece of evidence. Thus, when I entered the dungeons this time, I felt considerably more composed. When the man with the tray arrived, I placed the pin directly onto the tray. This is my plum blossom pin. I possess evidence to prove my innocence. May I be released, or could you take the pin to seek counsel? My words faltered in my throat, severed along with my pin. Without hesitation, the man with the tray plunged the pin into my neck. And so, you were destined to die. For daring to commit such an act, your entire family will eventually perish. This time, I met my demise in the same manner as the Empress Dowager. 5. The information was becoming overwhelmingly abundant. By imperial decree, my entire family was to be executed. But why? I could only suspect one individual, my sister, Yan Junqin. She had indeed worn the plum blossom pin when she left the palace. After parting ways, she vanished without a trace. I fell into deep contemplation. To be honest, I did not harbor any fondness for my sister. Though we were twins, our personalities seemed to be diametrically opposed. She was bright and flamboyant, fond of being coddled, and always sought to claim credit. I, conversely, was cautious, reserved, and introverted, revealing my true self only to those I knew well. I often felt as though I lived in her shadow. Many times, I felt a sense of injustice. We had been born together, shared a womb, and grown up side by side, yet she had emerged first, by a mere quarter of an hour. In this dynasty, the legitimate eldest daughter was destined to wield the most resources within the family of women. All rewards were given to her first. Even the plum blossom pin was selected by her, as she chose the one with the pure hue, leaving me with the one that had a mottled flower core. At family banquets, she would sweetly serve dishes to our father and pour tea for our mother. Though they tried to be impartial, I knew, in their hearts, they undoubtedly favored my elder sister far more. Even when it came to future matrimonial arrangements, it was imperative that I first make provisions for her. If she lingered in her unmarried state, I would be left as an old maid, waiting indefinitely. Thus, during our bickering, she always held herself with the pride of a little peacock, declaring, "Yan Junling, I am the elder sister. You must yield to me in all matters and heed my commands." Many times, as I gazed at the impurities on the plum blossom hairpin, I found myself seething with frustration. My thoughts wandered too far afield. Upon realizing this, I unconsciously grasped the flower bud on the hairpin. In the next moment, those who sought to apprehend me burst through the door. In this dire predicament, my first thought was to attempt to fight my way out with the hairpin. After all, I had little else to occupy my time. Half an hour later, I indeed realized that I had overthought the situation. In the future, I ought to read fewer martial arts tales. After my plum blossom hairpin pierced the arm of the tray-bearing man, he seized my throat once more with a single hand. This was the most humiliating death I had ever faced. The man discarded the tray, shattering the poisoned cup to pieces on the ground. He drew forth a dagger adorned with intricate markings and with swift precision, severed the tendons in my hands and feet. I emitted a wail of anguish that I scarcely believed came from me. Collapsing to the ground, I gasped like a wounded dog. He ground the broken hairpin into my flesh, sneering, "You wretch, do you not find your death sufficiently grotesque? Allow me to enlighten you." He produced a purple pill and forced me to swallow it. "Enjoy the next 24 hours at your leisure." Even though I endured countless agonies and met my demise repeatedly thereafter, the memory of this particular death remained vivid in my mind. My hair fell out strand by strand. Every pore on my body felt as though it were being pricked by needles. Subsequently, my internal organs seemed to be constricted, as if an invisible hand was wringing out every drop of blood until I resembled a desiccated corpse. Yet this was not the end. Ultimately, every inch of my bones was restructured amidst a clarity of pain, each finger contorting in an unnatural manner, as if someone were systematically bending them backward until they snapped. I finally understood why he had severed my tendons, to prevent me from taking my own life. I was tormented for a full 2 days, my sinews twisted, my heartstrings torn asunder. When the new cycle began, I was plagued by residual pain, forcing me to expel a mouthful of blood. Despair began to creep in, but I could not yield. I struck myself twice harshly, compelling my thoughts to focus. What had I pondered in the previous cycle? Ah, yes, the Emperor's decree for the execution of my entire family. Thus, all evidence pointed to my family as the true culprits behind the Empress Dowager's murder. Frankly, I found it hard to believe. Yet I had to uncover the true murder. I could not linger in thought. Otherwise, I would forever be trapped in this cycle, reliving the torment of death time and again. My parents would likewise meet a grim fate. If it were indeed my elder sister, then, regardless of the reason, I would personally ensure she was delivered to the Dali temple. Yet, I could not resist further contemplation. There were only 2 hairpins. If it were she, what could her motive possibly be? Upon regaining possession of the hairpin, a long-buried memory suddenly flashed in my mind like lightning. This was back when we had just learned of the Empress Dowager's divine lineage. My sister and I leaned against our mother, listening as she recounted tales of the Empress Dowager's youth. Each time, she would eagerly be the first to feed our mother a morsel of pastry, sneaking me a triumphant smile. When our mother spoke of the Empress Dowager ascending the sacrificial altar, accompanied by auspicious butterflies, my sister scoffed, "What is so difficult about that? There are stories where women hide butterflies in their cloaks to win the emperor's favor. As for the subsequent rainfall, it's even simpler. One can predict it by observing the wind direction. It's taught in female academies, after all, merely taking advantage of the uneducated commoners." Our mother swiftly covered her mouth. "Akin, you are becoming increasingly indiscreet. Speaking ill of the royal family is a grave offense." I seized the moment to interject. "Exactly. Mother is telling us a story. Do not interrupt." My sister, spurred by my retort, grew more fervent. "But do divine beings truly exist? I, for one, do not believe. The servants are absent. It is just the 2 of us sharing whispers, so it matters not. Mother, do tell, was there truly no dissent when the concept of divine spirit was proposed?" Yet again, her mouth was covered. "Dear heavens, do not say any more." Our mother, softening at the plea, glanced around and lowered her voice. Many voiced their dissent back then. But the late emperor cherished the Empress Dowager dearly and dealt harshly with those who disagreed. After the national master was born, no one dared to speak of it again. The Empress Dowager was not to appear publicly, yet everyone had seen the national master, performing rituals during festivals, his appearance remaining unchanged year after year. I countered my sister. "Cease your wild speculations. The national master is nearly 60 years old, yet he appears no older than someone in their 30s. If he were not the son of a divine being, how could he maintain such youthful looks?" Our conversation ended in discord. Yet, as I stepped outside, I distinctly heard her mumble, "I truly wonder if divine beings cannot die." At that moment, I was momentarily taken aback, but soon found myself pondering. After all, the Empress Dowager was the most esteemed woman in the land. Could it be that she merely maintained her beauty with care? Yet, in retrospect, a chill coursed through me. If it were indeed my sister, I quickened my pace. I truly wished to avoid encountering the tray-bearing man once more. I ran. In every direction I ran. Turning left upon exiting, I was captured. Proceeding straight, I was captured. Turning right, I was struck down. Circumventing through the back door, I was ambushed. Run, gasp. Run, gasp. Run, gasp. After numerous cycles, I was utterly exhausted, collapsing into a carriage. Damn it, Your Highness? The Empress Dowager. The most perilous locations are often the safest. They likely would not interrogate those entering the palace. I swiftly stripped off the maid's outer garment, donned it instead, removed all adornments, and retrieved the golden Nama box I had brought from the palace, leaping from the carriage. The Empress had just bestowed gifts, but the box bore palace markings, meant to be returned for reporting. At this moment, there was but one alley remaining before returning home. If I could take a detour through this alley and then parallel my way back to the palace, perhaps I could evade them. I prayed fervently, hoping that the news of my family's wanted status had not yet spread throughout the palace. Otherwise, the maid would also be apprehended. Fortunately, it seemed not to be the case. The emperor had issued a decree for our capture, yet few within the palace were aware. Using the box as cover, I made my way unobstructed into the inner palace. A fleeting thought of something amiss darted through my mind. It was only later that I understood the deeper meaning behind their failure to stop me. But at the time, I was too focused on my detour to grasp it. I made my way directly to the Shokong Palace, feigning participation in the team cleaning the floor tiles. The Empress Dowager's body had been merely tidied up, with bloodstains cleared away. Yet no one had lifted her into a coffin, nor had anyone removed the hairpin from her neck. Was this correct? I could only catch a distant glimpse of the hairpin's form, yet it did not hinder my sight. Pink, intricately carved with plum blossoms. My blood froze in that instant. My sister. Why? Was it merely to confirm whether divine beings could die? My sister had once jested, saying that the young crown prince was exceptionally handsome. It would not be amiss if she were to vie for the position of crown princess in the future. Had her daydream progressed to the point of eliminating the ageless Empress Dowager first? The more I pondered, the more chaotic my thoughts became. Yet one thing was certain. My sister had left the house today wearing the plum blossom hairpin. It was precisely because I had seen her wearing it that I had stubbornly chosen not to wear it myself, not wishing to be overshadowed by her. This was unequivocally true. I made a swift decision. Regardless of the circumstances, I had to find my sister. Then I seized her. Perhaps there would still be a chance to plead for the lives of our parents. It goes without saying that they must have been captured by now. I hoped they had not been assigned to the tray man. Without further ado, I retraced my steps out of the palace. I could not return to the residence. I hardly dared to venture in that direction. My sister had left the palace today with the second young lady of the Grand Tutor's family. I recalled the direction of the Grand Tutor's household, took a few steps outside, and was suddenly yanked away with great force. Instinctively, I wanted to scream, but another force quickly covered my mouth. I raised my eyes to see my sister, clad in the garments of a courtesan, looking at me with cold disdain. My gaze instinctively fell upon her hair. It was utterly bare. In that instant, a torrent of expletives surged within me. Yet the first question that escaped my lips was, "Where are our parents now?" She, however, erupted in anger first. "How should I know? Yan Junling, you have committed such treasonous acts, and I have yet to question you." I was bewildered, fury igniting within me. What of it if I merely entered the palace? "Yan Junqin, how dare you attempt to assassinate the Empress Dowager? Do you wish to implicate the entire Yan clan in your demise? Wasn't it you who killed her?" Yan Junqin was momentarily stunned. Then her voice sharpened. "Dare you cast blame upon me when death is upon you? Are you willing to go to the Dali Temple with me? Let us go. Whoever doesn't go is a dog." The two furious women shoved one another, and the outcome was evident. We did not reach the Dali Temple at all. In fact, we did not even step out of the alley. Soon, a group of people approached, following the commotion. As we were dragged away, my sister seemed to remember something. She uttered her final words to me. When it resets, come back here to find me. In that moment before death, my eyes widened in astonishment. This time, I did not waste time pondering. Once the cycle restarted, I took a detour straight to that alley. My sister, still dressed as a courtesan, rolled her eyes at me. You're taking forever. I've been waiting for you for a quarter of an hour. Without further ado, I seized her collar. Do you know I have returned? She rolled her eyes again. Thanks to you, this is my first time dying. Then she clapped her hands. Madam, prepare a private room and send over a set of clothing. Once we were alone, she spoke to me with an unusually harsh tone, revealing something shocking. Though I cannot restart the cycle like you, living again and again. But I widened my eyes, hanging onto her every word. I will synchronize my memories from each cycle. As she spoke, she sipped her tea and rolled her eyes again. You die so quickly. It took me 10 cycles just to find my way. You've died a total of 17 times. Haven to you? Yan Junling, I beg you. Be wise and refrain from recklessly restarting the cycle. I gulped down half a pot of tea to digest my sister's revelations. Each time I died, her fleeting memories of escape would flood into her mind at the moment of my rebirth. The deadline for each cycle coincided with the moment of my death. So while I struggled for survival, she too was groping about in the shadows, but she was luckier. She did not have to die. Each time I perished, her memories would synchronize with mine. It was only in the last cycle, when she and I were dragged away and persecuted, that she tasted poison. Since you generally meet your end at lightning speed, I Haven Tea gained much useful information. You can only blame yourself. She had only managed to discover this secret brothel hidden among the grand estates, a place solely for the amusement of the privileged and the eavesdropping of secrets. Though I was not concerned with the nature of the brothel at present, her words ignited my anger once more. Yan Junqin, what are you pretending for? Do you need to spy for information? I almost poured the hot tea over her head. Turning yourself in at the Dali Temple would be far more effective. Our parents would not remain missing with such dire prospects. Yan Junqin reacted even more strongly. What do you mean by turning myself in? To take the blame for you? Wasn't it you, Yan Junling, who killed the Empress Dowager? What could I have killed her with? I instinctively forgot to blame her, and instead clarified myself. I saw you wearing the plum blossom hairpin in the morning, so I didn't wear one. At that, both of us froze. I suddenly realized a possibility. But as we were arguing, I had no choice but to press on with my questioning. You know I dislike using the same things as you at the same time. And what about you? Yan Junqin, where is your hairpin? I saw you flaunting it when you went out. We shared an unusually quiet gaze for a few seconds. Then she pulled a silk handkerchief from her bosom. There lay her plum blossom hairpin, pristine and gleaming. My sister's tone turned unexpectedly serious. Sister, I swear it was not me. My thoughts shattered completely. Yet, deep down, I instinctively felt a sense of relief. It was not us who committed the murder. Our parents must be safe.
But why?
Who killed the Empress Dowager, and why frame the two of us sisters? I had never felt such a headache before. Yan Junqin tossed the courtesan's attire into my arms with irritation. Stop overthinking with that broken brain of yours. Come with me. First, we will find the murderer, and second, we will search for our parents. Let us ask around the brothel and see if there are any leads. My body obediently changed into the outfit. My sister retrieved a red ruby-embroidered purse and handed it to the madam. In no time, the madam reported that someone had seen our parents being taken in the southeast direction, a place designated for detaining officials and their families. My sister nudged me. Let us go. They will arrange for us to perform as singers for the guards, and we can peek into each cell. If anything seems amiss, just end it. I replied, such a plan is fraught with danger. How did you persuade them to help? She casually adjusted her clothing. Oh, our parents are one of the backers of this brothel. I was taken aback. She turned back, a sardonic smile on her face. I gathered that information in the cycle where you took 2 days to die. I calculated quickly. That was indeed the cycle where I perished from a strange poison. An involuntary shiver ran through me. I picked up a sharp dagger. If things went awry, it would lessen the pain of suicide. Indeed, it proved useful. I ended my life 6 or 7 times before checking every cell. Yet I found nothing. I even searched through the servants' storage, but did not catch a glimpse of our parents. Thus, heading southeast must have been a ruse. Whose eyes were they trying to deceive? By the 9th meeting, my sister appeared equally defeated. It was rare to see her lower her proud head. I cannot think of any more solutions. I, too, had abandoned any thoughts of mocking her. After much contemplation, I resolved to enter the palace. The Empress Dowager had been assassinated, and her beloved son, the Emperor, had laid down a death sentence on our family. Yet, she had another son, the National Master, who wielded great power. Having infiltrated the palace once, I thought to try my luck again. Without time to return home to retrieve my plum blossom hairpin, I directly took my sister's. When I made the request, she unhesitatingly thrust the hairpin into my hand. I felt a twinge of suspicion. Aren't you afraid I might claim your hairpin for myself and frame you for the Empress Dowager's murder? She rolled her eyes for the 100th time. Do you dare? Yan Junling, we are both daughters of the Ministry of War. Though you are timid and mediocre, far inferior to me, I know you would never do such a thing. My hand holding the hairpin paused. For some reason, my nose suddenly felt a bit sore. I touched my nose with a hint of guilt and said, "Do take care of yourself. Do not perish here." With determination, I made my way to the palace of the National Master, the Eastern Emperor's palace. The National Master is greatly revered by the people and holds the utmost respect from the Emperor. The Eastern Emperor's palace is a realm of unparalleled opulence, staffed by thousands of palace attendants. The National Master was meditating in a side chamber, exuding a warm and benevolent aura. At 60 years of age, he possessed the visage of a man in his 30s. Even as I appeared disheveled and breathless, he greeted me without a hint of disdain. He offered me a seat, poured tea, and patiently waited for me to regain my composure before inquiring, "What brings Miss Yen here today?" I bowed once more and stated my purpose directly, to seek his protection and assistance in locating our parents. His expression darkened as he replied, "This matter is not insurmountable. However, the evidence of your mother's assassination is irrefutable, and He did not believe in the innocence of my sister and me. Fortunately, I had brought a hairpin with me. I promptly presented it to him, declaring, "This is it. The one from the Empress Dowager's neck is certainly not one belonging to my sister and me." He took the hairpin, examining it closely without looking at me, and asked, "What of the other one?" Without thinking, I blurted out, "Mine is still at the minister's residence." Realizing my slip, I abruptly raised my head. This was wrong. My sister and I were identical. Only the mole behind our ears could distinguish us, and even our father occasionally confused us. But how could the National Master know I was the second miss? Unless in the next moment, the National Master's smile morphed into a sinister grin. "Thank you then, Miss Second," he said. A throng of individuals swiftly encircled me, restraining me in an instant. I struggled desperately, exclaiming, "National Master, surely you have misunderstood? It truly was not us." "Of course," he replied, toying with the hairpin as he lifted his gaze. "I certainly know it is not you. However, I must express my gratitude to Miss Second for delivering the evidence." He turned to issue a command. "Go to the Shokong Palace and replace this one. Inform the Emperor that I have apprehended the murderer." The realization struck me. This was a scheme centered around the Empress Dowager's death, using my entire family's lives as a shield against the Emperor's gaze. My eyes brimmed with rage as I shouted, "It is you who has brought ruin upon my family. It is you, my parents, who quarrel not for gain, have fallen victim to a vile creature like you. Why do you pry into every facet of my family?" Upon hearing the term vile creature, the National Master's expression soured instantly. His long, slender nails sank deep into the flesh of my face. "You should inquire of your parents why they did not surrender what should have been surrendered. You insolent wretch, utter another word, and I shall have your parents executed." I fell silent, blood and tears streaming from my 7 orifices. The tea was poisoned. He clapped his hands, commanding, "Release her, and make it appear as though she has taken her own life after being executed." His trusted subordinate stepped forward and drew a dagger to sever the ropes binding me. I noticed a complex insignia on the dagger. The National Master's final words echoed in my ears. "You have no idea how long I have feared your father. However, it matters not now. Who would believe the possessions of a sinner's father? I died with my eyes wide open. The insignia on the dagger was identical to that of the one wielded by the tray-bearing man. Thus, it had always been him. Everything was orchestrated by him. He had relentlessly pursued the annihilation of my family, ensuring we would meet our end without a burial plot. The Emperor was not to blame. It was he who wielded absolute power, severing our path to survival. Once more, I collapsed to the ground, drenched in cold sweat. It seemed I had drawn closer to the truth. But was there truly a way out? As I followed the route my sister had provided, despair consumed my thoughts. What secret did my parents conceal that incited the National Master to annihilate my family? The National Master exhibited no grief, indicating a rift with the Empress Dowager. What could be the cause? Or was the Empress Dowager himself the one who fell victim to the National Master? The questions multiplied. The dimly lit alleys wove a vast web around me. I flailed helplessly within it, awaiting the hunter's grasp. In a daze, I resolved to reunite with my sister first. She unusually prepared tea for me and patiently listened as I recounted the harrowing events of the previous cycle. When I lifted my gaze, her complexion had drained of color, yet she forced herself to sip from her cup, steadying her trembling hands. She said, "It is all right. You have done remarkably well this time. The priority now is to locate our parents and ascertain their condition. Only by finding them can we make further progress." She gently patted my back, reminiscent of our mother in our childhood. I suddenly felt as though I paled in comparison to her. The bickering and disputes were trivial in the grand scheme. What mattered most was that our family remained whole and united. Had she not unconditionally trusted me and given me the hairpin, I would never have discovered the identity of the mastermind, even if I died 100 times. In the fragrance emanating from my sister, I gradually began to find my calm. I inquired, "Have you made any progress on your end?" She shook her head. "I initially thought it was an important clue, but now that you have uncovered that the National Master is the mastermind, it has become irrelevant." I grasped her icy hand, insisting, "Let us hear it. It must be of use." She nodded and sat down to pour me a cup of tea. In this seemingly endless abyss, it was the first time my sister and I shared such a peaceful coexistence. The National Master and the Empress Dowager have always been at odds. The National Master is known to consort with courtesans, claiming it balances yin and yang. Many powerful figures have secretly sent maidens to the Eastern Emperor's palace, and those maidens never returned. What is the reason behind the discord between mother and son? Uncertain. However, it appears the Empress Dowager once voiced objections to his overwhelming power. My sister scoffed. To wield such power brings more harm than good. Is he not well-versed in celestial phenomena? The capital is currently suffering from drought. Has he summoned even a single drop of rain? At that moment, the brothel madam entered with refreshments. I was taken aback by how my sister maintained such a candid rapport with them. "The rain the National Master summoned is never timely," she remarked. 30 years ago, during the plague that claimed 300,000 lives in the capital, he only produced the antidote afterward. Although people revered him as a deity once the plague was lifted, wasn't it rather late? Why could he not have saved lives sooner? Had fewer perished, the world would not be in such turmoil, with enemies lurking at every corner. A sudden shiver ran through me. This catastrophic plague was known to all, yet it had been too long past. My sister and I were not yet born and remained unaware of the details. I tentatively asked, "What was that plague like?" Upon hearing my question, the madam sat down, tears streaming down her face. Had it not been for that plague, I would not have fallen so low. She was originally from the capital, and her ancestors even held a minor official position. It was the death of her grandfather from the plague that led to her family's downfall. Out of filial piety, her father sold her to bury his father, and she became utterly destitute. I will never forget the manner of my grandfather's death. His hair fell out strand by strand, and he spat out nearly all his blood. When he could still speak, he said he felt as if he were rolling on a bed of nails, every pore stinging as if pierced by needles. But that is not the most terrifying part. The most terrifying part is I interrupted her. The most terrifying part is that every finger of your grandfather twisted in a grotesque manner, as if each bone were being broken in a cruel fashion. Am I right? The madam's eyes widened in shock. How do you know? My sister suddenly lifted her head to look at me. Because I had experienced that death once before. It was during that cycle. The peculiar poison fed to me by the tray-bearing man, the manner of death it induced. The agony inflicted by that insidious poison seemed to transcend the cycle of reincarnation, etching itself into my very bones. My hand trembled, causing tea to spill upon my skirt, while the courtesan's cup, along with its contents, clattered to the floor. Are you suggesting that this is not a natural disaster, but rather a calamity wrought by human hands? Her tears, mingled with cosmetics, dripped murkily onto the table. 300,000 vengeful souls, countless individuals like me, trampled into the mire, forever deprived of the sun. And you dare to tell me that this devastation was not the result of nature's wrath, but of human malice? The courtesan and I wept together, our heads bowed in sorrow. Sister Bao gently patted our backs, offering solace. Once our tears subsided, the courtesan, her eyes reddened, declared, "Speak your desires. I shall shatter my pots and sell my iron to fulfill them." I fell into contemplation. The national master claims that my parents possess something detrimental to him. They must be under his control. Can you locate the secret place where the national master holds them captive? Without uttering a word, the courtesan stepped outside, returning shortly with a map after a brief interval. Follow this path. Even the dogs in the ditches could uncover it. Sister Bao and I exchanged glances, realizing the depths of the concealment that had previously eluded us. After 4 cycles of reincarnation, we finally beheld our parents for the first time. I anticipated another wave of tears, yet gazing at my once radiant mother, her hair disheveled, and my father, whose once handsome visage was marred by scars. We merely pressed our lips together, resolving to shed tears only after their rescue. For now, we needed to ascertain what they held in their grasp. My father coughed up a mouthful of blood. It concerns an informant. The secrets he possesses could render the national master utterly undone. What secrets? My mother shook her head. His lips are sealed. We only know that the plague from 30 years ago harbors mysteries, yet the informant would not utter a single word regarding its specifics. Thus, a peculiar equilibrium had existed between the Ministry of Rights and the national master. But now, I nodded in understanding. The Empress Dowager's death disrupted this balance, prompting the national master to strike first. Sister Bao expressed her skepticism. Is it truly impossible that the national master was responsible for the Empress Dowager's demise? My father immediately countered, impossible. A weighty silence enveloped Sister Bao and me as we exchanged solemn glances. If the national master were not the murderer, then the true force behind these events remained shrouded in further enigma. Our only recourse was to pursue the informant. I inquired of my father, "Where's the informant now?" In the blink of an eye, the sound of applause pierced the air as the national master burst through the door, accompanied by a throng of followers. "Ah, the family is all gathered. The show is about to commence." This was my inaugural experience of being subjected to death by 1,000 cuts. 2 cross-shaped implements restrained Sister Bao and me on either side. The national master reclined among us, a dancer draped across his lap. He plucked a grape. "Will you divulge the informant's location?" My parents gritted their teeth in silence. The national master flicked his fingers, and I felt a sharp pain in my arm. A slice of flesh fell from the executioner's bone-cutting knife. My mother cried out, "Ailing!" As long as my parents remained silent, each question from the national master would result in a cut upon Sister Bao and me. Sister Bao endured over a dozen cuts before losing consciousness. My parents' anguished cries echoed, "Our daughter!" The national master's laughter grew increasingly unrestrained. "If you refuse to speak, your daughter shall be reduced to mere bones. They say beauty resides in the bones, not the skin. I am quite curious to see which of your daughters is the more exquisite." Tears of blood streamed from my mother's eyes. "You carve my flesh. You gouge out my eyes. Spare my daughters." The national master cleared his ears. "I shall ask once more, where is the informant?" At last, my father relented. "Come closer, and I shall tell you." When the national master leaned in, my father shouted at the top of his lungs, "I know your thing is no longer functioning. How does it feel, old man, to be half paralyzed, watching the dancer without being able to touch her? Ha ha ha." I struggled to open my eyes, desperately shaking my head. "Father, do not provoke him." The national master cast the grape he held onto the ground, his expression transforming into a mask of fury. It appears you have chosen to reject my hospitality, minister.
He clapped his hands.
Sister Bao and I became the mourners, pleading no, please. 72 tortures, one by one, were inflicted upon them. I watched as my parents gritted their teeth, slowly fracturing before our eyes. Sister Bao nearly lost her voice. Father, please tell him. My mother was the first to succumb, unable to withstand the third torture. My father persevered until the national master grew impatient. Spitting out a grape seed, he declared, "You may not speak, but I will eventually extract the truth. You shall all descend into hell." My father led the way, departing before Sister Bao and me. In his final moments, he stretched out his bloodied hand with all his strength, yet could no longer reach our cheeks. His last words were, "Go home." I could no longer contain my grief, bursting into tears. I yearned for home, yet our home was lost. In that instant, a newfound determination surged within me. I resolved to ensure that the national master faced the most excruciating punishment, even if it required countless reincarnations and enduring tortures 1,000-fold worse than his. There would undoubtedly come a time when I would witness him shatter into fragments. In the fleeting negligence of the executioner, I indeed had the opportunity to end my life. Yet I refrained. It was only when the final blade pierced my heart that I was thrust back into the cycle of reincarnation. Pain could marinate hatred within my very marrow. However, on the surface, Sister Bao and I tacitly feigned forgetfulness regarding the events of the previous reincarnation. No one broached the subject of searching for our parents. I returned to the idle state of the earlier cycles. I requested an assortment of weapons from the courtesan. I ventured to the Eastern Imperial Palace 13 times, successfully slaying him thrice. Once I plunged a dagger clean through him, another time I wielded an iron whip that did not kill him but shattered his neck, and yet another, I poisoned his tea. In each act of vengeance, despair and fury enveloped me. I found myself disinclined to continue living.
So be it.
Despite suffering death by strangulation thrice, execution by slicing thrice, and poisoning 7 times, he too did not emerge unscathed. On the 14th attempt, I felt emboldened to resurrect the glory of the 4th cycle, seizing a hairpin to strike him down. I honed the pin and thrust it directly into his brain through his nostrils. His demise was agonizingly slow. Tears streamed down his face as he managed to utter, "Throw this vile creature into the alchemical furnace." My heart sank. Immediately, I found myself bound and dragged into the secret chamber within the Eastern Imperial Palace. The blue flames consumed me. I beheld every inch of my skin swiftly contract, darken, and emit the hissing sound of moisture evaporating. Was I truly to be refined into an elixir? I pondered. No, this was not right. The alchemical furnace? Amidst the blazing inferno, I glimpsed a dark, sinister entity forming a line. I sat upon the ground, drenched in cold sweat. A hypothesis urgently required validation. But where could my parents have concealed the informant? I felt compelled to seek clues. Yet when I lifted my head, I realized something was amiss. I was presently within my own abode, no longer en route home. The time of reincarnation had shifted backward. Upon reflection, it became evident that each time I rushed to Sister Bao, the journey grew increasingly arduous. The cycle of reincarnation had consistently been retreating. I simply had not recognized it before. Had I squandered my opportunities in vain? In all these cycles of reincarnation, I have never felt such despair. Everything seems to have returned to its origin. Once again, I encounter the Tray Man. This time, I have discerned all his secrets. Yet, I remain unable to evade that fateful cup of poison. Am I truly destined to be eternally ensnared? The sensation of searing heat courses through my body once more. I began to hide, concealing myself within the confines of my own home, hoping to elude their search. My house is indeed vast. However, no matter how I concealed myself, they would conduct a thorough search, ultimately dragging me to meet the Tray Man. I continued to evade capture, hiding in the woodshed, the dog hole, even within the well. They relentlessly pursued me. Poison, suffocation, slitting throats. While seeking refuge, I also attempted to assassinate the Tray Man. The good news is that my martial skills have improved. The bad news is, for every one I eliminate, another one appears, for the Tray Men are inexhaustible. Yes, from my descriptions, you can discern that my mind is somewhat frayed. I even began to lie in the garden, pretending to be a pile of flour mud, or curled up in the stable, masquerading as a horse. The agent sent by the national master would even poke through the warm horse manure to find me. Clearly, that informant is of utmost importance. Another 4 cycles have passed, and the poison has begun to take its toll. I long for a moment of respite. After so many cycles, I have yet to sleep even once. In life, I used to enjoy deep slumber, but in death, there is no such thing as eternal rest. I decided to abandon all restraint. I ran into my parents' bedroom. I have always missed the warmth of my mother's bed. There is no need for charcoal or a warming stove. She is perpetually warm. I lay directly upon my parents' bed. My father had several books at the head of the bed. I flipped through them one by one. When I reached the 4th book, a resounding crash echoed. A narrow hole appeared behind the bed. I followed the opening down a long, dim passage. A flickering candlelight illuminated the way. Turning my head, I locked eyes with a man.
Who are you?
I had traversed the iron shoes in vain. It turned out that my father's cryptic words about returning home held this meaning. The informant was hiding within my own household. My emotions surged, and I seized his collar, demanding, "What do you know about the national master?" The informant was taken aback by my audacity. "You are the daughter of the minister?"
No.
"Your master didn't he divulge anything to me? You don't think you can seduce me with your beauty, do you?" "Still, I must reiterate, I know too much. If I reveal it all, I lose my leverage. What if you betray me? You can't possibly expect to catch a wolf with empty hands, can you?" So that was the implication.
Fine.
A rustling sound emerged from above. "There's a problem in the bedroom. Everyone come here." I extended my hand. "Do you have a knife?" He hesitantly handed me one. I smiled at him. "This time, remember to erase the traces. I shall return." Then, in his terrified gaze, I slit my throat. This time, I ensured that my parents' bedroom showed no signs of struggle before entering the secret chamber. The informant still stared at me.
Who are you?
I sat beside his cramped tea table and gulped down a cup, wiping my mouth before striking at the heart of the matter. I did not come empty-handed. The national master has been secretly concocting pills, and he has indeed created a wondrous poison, has he not? The expression I sought finally appeared on the informant's face. I pressed on, the one that caused the death of 300,000 people, the plague. With a thud, he dropped something in shock. I picked up his dagger and returned it to his hand, but why would he do such a thing? Our emperor has expressly forbidden such actions. Why would he engage in alchemy with his unaging body? So he does not possess an unaging body. Nor is he the son of the empress, is he? The informant finally spoke. He has been researching methods akin to yin and yang, seeking longevity for a long time. Eventually, he began alchemy with some success, but it merely preserved his appearance while his body continued to decay. That purple poison was originally a byproduct of a failed concoction, but the national master discovered its torturous effects and began using it to eliminate those he deemed undesirable. And the plague was originally a formation. I was perplexed. A formation? He nodded, his eyes glistening with tears. The plague's inception was merely a peripheral formation he stumbled upon. It claimed that by sacrificing 3,000 souls, one could remain forever youthful, with the more tragic the death, the better the effect. He established a site in a remote area outside the city, pouring poison into the canals and wells, merely for a trial. However, I raised my head, tears streaming down my face. However, the drainage system was difficult to control precisely, causing the poison to leak into the entire city as underground water source, resulting in this calamity, correct? The informant fumbled about, unable to find anything to dry his tears, and could only lower his head to continue. Yes, that substance is deadly. Even a tiny amount can kill a person. Yet he used 100-fold dosage for each execution, leading to the city's destruction. I recalled the size of that purple pill in full agreement. This is not the most despicable part. The most heinous act is that, to disguise this as a plague rather than his error, he withheld the antidote until 300,000 had perished. As the informant spoke, he trembled all over later. Many who had suffered residual effects received the antidote and unwittingly worshipped him as a deity, even dedicating their lives to his cause, oblivious to the fact that they were merely recognizing a thief as their father. I was nearly at a loss for words. In prosperity, the common people suffer. In demise, the common people suffer. 300,000. This directly led to a dynasty that once flourished becoming a mere shadow of its former self. Prior to this, our emperor had studied only methods for governing in times of peace, completely unprepared for the sudden decline. He obliterated a dynasty. From this moment forth, revenge was no longer solely for myself or the minister's residence. I shall, without fail, reduce him to ashes. As I pondered this, I suddenly heard the informant respond to my previous question. He indeed does not possess an unaging body, but he is, without a doubt, the biological son of the Empress. At that moment, I had yet to comprehend the significance of this revelation. After all he had disclosed, the informant refused to continue. My instincts told me there were far greater secrets yet to be unearthed. I inquired, "What do you desire?" "I will do my utmost to assist you." He merely shook his head. "You know too much. I cannot divulge any more." "Very well. The most pressing matter at hand is to escape." I adjusted my skirt and said to the informant, "Hand me the dagger. I will check if they have departed." He shook his head. "Come with me." He led me through the narrow passage, and after winding through a labyrinth of twists and turns, we emerged into the light of day. Climbing up to the exit, I felt a sense of familiarity with the street scene. Turning right, I saw my sister still clad in the garb of a courtesan, arms crossed, waiting for me.
So,
My family's secret passage connects to this brothel? What has all my evasion and those countless cups of poison amounted to? My sister rolled her eyes. "Consider yourself unfortunate. I waited for you for several cycles, and now they call me the stone of waiting husband, you know? Truly useless." I did not let her off easily. "What have you been doing all these cycles? Surely it wasn't just waiting and picking at your toes?" She pouted but lowered her head, somewhat embarrassed. I did uncover a bit of the Empress's secrets, but mostly it was just gossip. My body was remarkably candid. I wished to hear. I, along with my sister, the informant, and the matron, gathered around a table. The informant recounted the tale concerning the national master, and the matron wept bitterly, pledging her utmost support for our cause. Subsequently, I cradled a hand warmer, listening intently as my sister divulged the secrets of the Empress Dowager. You are all aware of her origins, are you not? The sole daughter of the minister's household, she was once prophesied by a master to possess a phoenix destiny. Yet, prior to this destiny, her heart belonged to another. My eyelids fluttered. Is that truly so? The matron nodded. It is said she was quite close to a prominent military family, the Chines. Young General Chine was the object of the Empress Dowager's affections. They exchanged letters for quite some time, but then the Chancellor abruptly declared her phoenix fate, effectively sentencing their feelings to death. My sister sighed. Those in power serve the people. The marriage of a minister's daughter is not solely her affair, and thus, it cannot be helped. The matron, puzzled, remarked, "But your minister's daughter is still a person, forced to marry someone she does not love for the sake of her family's ambitions." I inquired. And then what happened? Eventually, the Empress Dowager realized there was no hope left with the young general, so she arranged to meet him one last time, after which she severed her past and resolved to become the crown princess. However, fate is fickle, and they were unable to meet for that final farewell. Was it the Chancellor who intervened?
no.
My sister shook her head. On that day, the young general simply did not show up. Shortly after, he was dispatched far away. And then, he perished suddenly. My eyes widened in shock. Her beloved died? Good heavens, what a devastating blow. My sister nodded. The youthful white moonlight never saw her lover again, and thus, the ruler lies buried beneath the earth, while I am left to endure the snow of this world. I could scarcely fathom the turmoil that must have engulfed the Empress Dowager upon receiving news of her beloved's death. The matron took a sip of tea and continued. Nearly a month later, the Empress Dowager declared herself a divine maiden, claiming to have conceived the national master through the essence of heaven and earth. I became emotionally immersed, my eyes glistening. Could it be that the national master is the child of her white moonlight? That would not be too bad. At least it would leave her with a cherished memory.
Crash.
The informant crushed the teacup, blood pouring from his hand.
Lies.
All lies. Everyone looked up.
What do you mean by lies?
Is it that she never had a white moonlight, or is it about the child? He violently overturned the table. Her child is not the spawn of any so-called general. The father of her child is a mountain bandit. In the cramped compartment, the air became nearly stagnant. What on earth happened? The informant glared intensely at me. I do not desire wealth or your assistance for my family, for I have no family left. I have but one request. I want the national master to suffer eternal damnation. My sister nodded fervently, grasping the informant's sleeve. Our desires align. Rest assured, he shall not remain whole. He sat down somewhat dazed. I cannot believe I find myself trusting you. In the 35th year of Jingming, on the 18th day of winter, it was the day when Yilingxi was to meet her white moonlight for the last time. She evaded the chancellor, claiming to be out for leisure, and left with only a few maidservants. Though they could have met in the capital, her white moonlight chose a remote mountain temple, seeking to avoid prying eyes. Yet, she encountered not her beloved youth, but a band of mountain thieves. They came not for riches, but for her. A few defenseless women, utterly powerless. No one knew of the humiliation she endured, whether it was one assailant or a group. All that was known was that when the bandits departed, she was left without a single article of clothing intact. How utterly despairing must she have felt? Did she ever contemplate ending her life? Such thoughts will remain forever unknown. She sat alone in the mountain temple, waiting for a messenger to bring her back to the chancellor. From sunset to moonrise, on that day, her young general did not appear. The punctuation she envisioned was tainted with boundless ink. She never had the chance to inquire what had transpired that day to prevent his arrival, for her young general had been dispatched far away, and on the journey, he perished suddenly. All love and hatred, all grievances and blame, abruptly ceased. Yet, she received no respite. She became pregnant. For self-preservation and to safeguard her entire family, she had no choice but to proceed as such. From then on, her beloved faded into decay, no longer able to ride spiritedly, nor could she ever replicate his features. As she ascended the altar, she prostrated herself with each step. Behind her, butterflies danced gracefully. Before her, snow adorned her hair. In that storm that enveloped her, time lost all meaning. Everyone fell silent. I was the first to shatter the stillness. So the Empress Dowager is not a divine maiden at all. Indeed, my sister concurred, while auspicious omens can be fabricated, her masquerade as a divine maiden was merely a means to protect her family. Otherwise, the daughter of the Phoenix Fate, having been violated or bearing an illegitimate child, would have brought about the annihilation of the entire Yi family. But I remained skeptical. How is it that she never aged?
Why?
The room lapsed into contemplation once more. It is an obsession. After a long pause, the matron raised her head, her rouge and lip color having run together from tears. Perhaps the national master employed some remedy on her, but above all, it is the obsession. When the late emperor and the eldest prince contended for the throne, did they not instigate a palace coup that resulted in the deaths of countless souls? I nodded. That war severely weakened the nation, leaving innumerable families bereft of fathers, husbands, and sons. Indeed, at that time, my father had a fellow townsman who suffered from a leg ailment and could only send his 17-year-old son to the battlefield. Just before departing, the boy said to his father, who was not yet 40, "I hope that when I return, your hair has not turned gray." For that one sentence, the father lived his entire life in fear of becoming gray-haired. He waited 20 years, from a robust youth to a wrinkled visage, terrified his child would not recognize him with white hair. The matron wiped her tears. I once encountered that old man. It was hard to believe. Yet it was indeed true. By the end, I was in tears. My sister's eyes also glistened. And then the matron paused for a long time, seemingly choosing her words carefully. Eventually, a part of his son's body was recovered. The old man's obsession dissipated, his hair turned completely gray overnight, and he appeared withered. He passed away early the next morning. War brings only wounds that never heal. Seeing the three women weep so profoundly, the informant attempted to lighten the mood. At the very least, don't you girls cherish your beauty? The Empress Dowager, despite her fate, was still favored by time.
Do not weep.
I shook my head. She was never favored by time. She was merely abandoned by it. For the Empress Dowager, all that was most important to her was forsaken on that day. The deadline is eternity. To prevent the truth of the divine maiden's deception from being unveiled and to protect the lives of her entire clan, she could never grow old again. In life, one must hold on to something. Otherwise, existence becomes a prolonged suffering. And her sole remaining aspiration was to pursue the youthful specter of a dream. In a parallel world, he rides gallantly, adorning her with flowers for the last time in the mountain temple. They were both still young, forever young. For the next 60 years, she would ardently perform a play of the bright moon embracing her. Throughout her life, she could never escape the storm of the altar. But the national master was different. He bore no burdens. He was merely a fortunate rogue. With nothing to protect or carry, he relentlessly drained the lifeblood of others to prolong his own youth. All are unfortunate souls, the madam lamented. In the relentless pursuit of power, from emperors to commoners, none ultimately meet a good end. I sense something amiss. What role did the late emperor play in all this? The madam replied, in my youth, many young ladies yearned for the love of emperors and empresses. The late emperor left the imperial harem vacant for the Empress Dowager, defying all opposition, and only fathered the current emperor. It is widely known that he loved Empress Yi for a lifetime. Alas, it is a pity. They respected each other but never truly understood one another. The beloved fell into the mire, and those who shared the pillow were beyond reach. A lifetime of companionship, yet they remained forever regretful. Love is indeed a peculiar thing, tangible in death, intangible in life. While alive, it ebbs and flows like the tide, unshakable yet inky with despair. Only when abruptly halted does it penetrate the marrow, becoming irretrievable. But don't you think, Sister Bao hesitated, that this General Qin seems rather suspicious? We lifted our heads. Those from military families wielding power are often regarded with trepidation. Generally, if one wishes to avoid peril, they must carefully avoid any entanglements with the royal family. Yet once the Empress Dowager was publicly criticized, she became a confirmed member of the royal family. Even her suitor would be determined by the final decree. Even if this General Qin is infatuated, is his father deceased? Moreover, after the incident, the Qin family has only feigned ignorance, never making any statements. Can a mere general, even of noble birth, simply perish at a whim? I scratched my head. But most importantly, Sister Bao gazed intently at us. The downfall of the Qin family occurred shortly after the crown prince's failed coup. My heart sank. A dark haze clouded my vision. If from the very beginning, all of the Empress Dowager's tragedies stemmed from political strife. In any case, this beloved is certainly no virtuous man. His death was either a covert execution ordered by the reigning emperor or a ploy to disgrace the Empress Dowager, rendering her a pawn of the crown prince. In any case, no matter how many times I am flayed, I refuse to believe this was an accidental death. She spoke with such conviction. Yet, her reasoning was undeniably sound. No matter how one viewed it, this young general had orchestrated the Empress Dowager's lifelong tragedy, even altering the fate of the nation. The true reasons, however, could never be verified again. I propped my chin in my hand and sighed. Those mountain bandits never anticipated that their actions would lead to such a multitude of tragedies. The informant's eyes reddened as he replied, indeed, because I am one of those mountain bandits, a descendant of the collateral line. I was taken aback, choking on a sip of water, unsure whether to console or reprimand him. It was he who had divulged this information. They violated noble women, and their crimes were akin to treason, leading to the secret execution of 10 clans by the Prime Minister and the Crown Prince, which I accept. The collateral descendants later faced relentless hardships, which we also accept. However, the National Master subsequently captured all collateral descendants to ensure that the secret of their lineage would never be revealed. They were turned into elixirs. Beneath the table, his nails dug deep into his palm, bloodied and mangled. I was but a child then. He smiled and told me to become an alchemist's apprentice. I watched my relatives twist and blacken in the furnace, turning to ash. The madam, momentarily shocked, pulled out her handkerchief to bandage his hand. Stop talking.
Our goals align.
He has committed numerous atrocities. He will surely pay the price. After being starved for so long, let us eat first. Only when we are full can we muster the strength for vengeance. As I drank the hot soup, I finally felt a semblance of life returning. The myriad of abruptly imparted information began to coalesce and operate along its own course. Reflecting on everything, suddenly all my thoughts intertwined. I finally understand. I set down my chopsticks. The Empress Dowager was indeed not killed by the National Master. The Empress Dowager died by suicide. This was the crux of the matter. The Empress Dowager was ultimately not a divine being. She feared aging, yet there would inevitably come a day when her beauty would wither entirely. To safeguard a lie, she maintained it throughout her life. Had she died of old age or illness, this grand deception would have been exposed. This era is already ravaged, and the people can no longer endure such upheaval. At 75, she could no longer withstand it. She had lived her life as the most esteemed woman in the world. Yet ultimately, what remained for her was only the fate of a sudden death. But what wrongdoing had she committed? After satisfying our hunger, I extended my hand to the informant. "Give me your dagger. Come with me into the palace." He was taken aback. "I am a man. I shall wield the blade to protect you." I swiftly snatched the dagger from him.
You do not understand.
I led the informant directly to the Queen's palace. When the Emperor arrived at Fingy Palace, I knelt with the informant. "I, your humble servant, wish to accuse the National Master of causing chaos in the realm and of impure bloodlines." Upon hearing this, the Emperor waved his hand. A group promptly seized me. Moments later, the imperial edict arrived. The second daughter of the Yen family spreads slander and falsely accuses the National Master. She is to be executed by strangulation. And the Minister of Revenue is to be dismissed and his family confiscated. Once more, I steeled myself, gritting my teeth as I took the informant to the brothel. But truthfully, I felt a bit despondent. The truth lay before me, yet the dog emperor chose to remain blind. Sister Bao slammed the table. "Are you foolish? The emperor would certainly keep family scandals under wraps. Indeed, he and the National Master shared the same mother. How could he accept that the disgrace of his mother bore a brother who should not exist being publicly revealed? The previous coup against the crown prince had cast a shadow over all royal descendants. The tens of thousands dead from the coup, coupled with the 300,000 fatalities from the plague in the capital, left the entire nation in turmoil. The current emperor is also fickle, inherently suspicious, which undoubtedly influences the fate of the realm. From his reaction, it was clear he had long known that the National Master was a source of shame for his mother. Yet the National Master's identity could never be exposed. Thus, to accuse the National Master, we must not mention the Empress Dowager, lineage, or anything related to alchemy. Therefore, only the matter of the plague could serve as a breakthrough. I died twice more. The first time was when the informant, in a fit of emotion, mentioned alchemy. Leading to yet another execution, I preemptively inflicted a wound upon myself. The second time was when we had ample witnesses, but the emperor hesitated, stating that the Dali Temple must find material evidence before arresting the National Master. The National Master, that old sorcerer, immediately seized the opportunity and poisoned both the informant and me. The setting sun was cleaved by crimson clouds, distorting like my neck under the pull of light and shadow. I felt a sense of impending failure. Sister Bao slapped me awake. "Isn't the timing of your rebirth drawing ever closer to the moment of arrest?" Her fingers rhythmically tapped the table. "Sister, let go and act." The Empress Dowager sought to use her death to disrupt the balance between the National Master and the officials, dragging this abomination, which should not exist, to hell. She must possess crucial evidence. Once again, I entered the palace alone. After 3 cycles of rebirth, playing various roles as palace maids, I finally approached the Empress Dowager. I saw the wound on her neck. The flesh bore clear signs of being pulled out and reinserted with a weapon. The plum blossom hairpin was a lifeless pink, likely a painted imitation. The carving of the plum blossom was exceedingly crude, indicating it was hastily crafted. Ultimately, it all comes down to power. When one wields authority, even a counterfeit of this caliber can claim my life time and again. Rising to my feet, I stepped upon a loose tile, curiosity compelling me to lift it. Within, I discovered a handwritten letter. The first 2 pages contained the formations devised by the National Master for the sacrifice of those 3,000 souls, along with corresponding blueprints detailing the arrangement of houses on the outskirts of the city. The plans even delineated the course of the waterway and the drainage points for the toxic substances. The evidence was irrefutable. The final page bore a prayer. In this life, I, Yilingsi, have never believed in gods or Buddhas and have been entangled in retribution throughout my existence. Yet, at the end of my life, I yearn to beseech once. If there truly exists a deity above, might you assist me in granting many a soul a path to survival? Having lingered over the letter too long, I was once again seized and dragged away. Little did she know, she had already provided us with a path to salvation, a passage that could only be opened through our united efforts. Upon awakening this time, I understood that this was the final cycle. Should I delay further, capture would be inevitable. In the previous cycles, we had already conspired our strategy. I promptly communicated with my informant, leading him to a brothel to rendezvous with my sister. Subsequently, we brought the informant to the central yamen. In the carriage, I sketched the first 2 blueprints from the letter of Empress Yi. My previous prolonged reading of the letter had not been in vain. Following our plan, I would strike the public drum at the busiest hour, accusing the national master. The institution of the public drum had been established over a century ago, marked by stringent regulations. Any individual who sounded the drum, regardless of their motives, must first endure a form of torture. Commoners faced the bed of nails, while officials were subjected to the rack. To accuse the powerful required the shedding of skin. However, once subjected to punishment, the case must be processed. The emperor would personally attend to the public trial. Yet, as I descended from the carriage, my sister forcefully shoved me aside. Realization dawned upon me, and I desperately grasped her. Yet, she tore her sleeve and pushed me back. Those in power are meant to serve the people, she declared, holding her head high like a beautiful, proud peacock. I am the legitimate daughter of the officials. You, a mere second daughter, should know your place and not steal my thunder. I was caught off guard, falling to the ground as I watched her, resolute, strike the public drum.
Sister,
I cried, tears streaming down my face. She beat the drum for a long time until the crowd swelled. She was publicly punished, the rack crushing her legs. She gritted her teeth, refusing to bow her head or utter a sound. Wiping my tears, I ascended the platform. Holding aloft the blueprints, the plague of 30 years ago was solely the doing of the national master. The informant produced a purple pill from his pocket. The true culprit is this. At this very moment, within the Eastern Imperial Palace, there are thousands of such poisons. The crowd erupted in fervor. By the time the emperor arrived, the people had spontaneously begun to chant, "Investigate the national master. Eliminate the threat to the people." The emperor, left with no other choice, waved his hand. "Dali Temple, investigate swiftly." Those who had endured too much pain stood resolutely waiting here. There was no time left for any clandestine schemes. Swiftly, the evidence was procured. Alongside a large box of poison, there was a trove of secret letters, of debauchery, abuse, coercion into prostitution, embezzlement, bribery, and the abuse of power. All that was dark and hidden would ultimately be exposed to the light of day. At last, I had succeeded. The emperor personally ordered the investigation of the Eastern Imperial Palace, apprehending the national master and sentencing him to death by 1,000 cuts, executed immediately in public. The people erupted in cheers. I witnessed tears rolling down the faces of young and old alike. I pondered whether this constituted the perfect conclusion. As the sun set, the birds returned to their nests. My sister was escorted back to her residence, accompanied by the finest physician from the palace. I, clutching my sister's plum blossom hairpin, was brought into the palace. I walked 3 paces behind the emperor as we proceeded to Shokong Palace. After scrutinizing the murder weapon, all possibilities of reversal vanished. The emperor discovered the empress's letter. The aged sovereign sat upon the tiled floor, his expression transitioning from impassive to trembling shoulders, ultimately breaking into silent tears. Mother. In the end, no one emerged as a victor. My heart ached as I quietly departed from Shokong Palace. Not far ahead lay the Eastern Imperial Palace. I wished to see it, to ascertain whether this was still a cyclical dream, to determine if I could finally lead a normal life henceforth. Everything seemed to have settled at last. People came and went from the Eastern Imperial Palace as clear basins of water were carried in, only to emerge muddied and dark. The National Master's crimes were far too grave. The Eastern Imperial Palace was entirely dismantled. The bodies of young palace maids were dragged out one after another. They had committed no wrongs. They might not have even known what transpired. Yet, caught in the torrent stirred by the powerful, they could not escape the fate of being shrouded in white cloth. An unusual sensation surged within me. In the countless cycles, I had heard the cries of too many wronged souls. From the moment the Empress's innocence was tarnished to her tragic end, from the bloodshed instigated by the Crown Prince's coup d'etat to the massacre of 300,000 in the imperial city, the corpses piled high. Not to mention the commoners ensnared in the ceaseless struggles. The conflicts among the noble families continued unabated. The tragedies of this world had not diminished in the slightest. In all those cycles, the only one to find respite seemed to be myself. Even that most esteemed woman had her life's pivotal moments forever concealed from the light of day. Until her dying breath, she was bound to uphold a lie. I wondered if my sister could retain the use of her legs. So proud she was, yet she might very well be condemned to live her days in a wheelchair. This was not right. It should not be like this. I lifted my head, and with a thunderous clap, a bolt of lightning stretched infinitely across the void. Suddenly, I grasped my skirt and began to run frantically. I had finally awakened to the truth. The fate of the National Master should never have been death. Rather, he should never have been born at all. I understood at last. I dashed straight from the Eastern Imperial Palace back to the minister's residence. My parents and sister were gathered around the warm stove, sipping tea. They squinted at me from afar, smiling and beckoning. "Ailing, come have a warm drink." The stars twinkled faintly, and the lights shone brightly. Originally, countless souls should have been able to enjoy such a warm night. I approached them step by step. Then, I pressed the dagger against my throat. My parents' smiles froze instantly. "Ailing, what is the matter? Put down the knife. Don't hurt yourself." But I could not heed anything else. My gaze pierced through my parents, landing on my sister, who had just set down her teacup. A splint was strapped to her leg, and I could only wonder how great the repercussions would be. I declared, "I want to try again." My sister's expression turned incredulous. "Are you mad? This life is our last chance. Everything has reached completion." I shook my head, the delicate pain coursing through my neck. "Sister, is it truly complete?" This world was clearly a patchwork of wounds. Their expressions faltered. I sensed they understood. My parents trembled, reaching out to embrace me, but their hands only brushed against my cold cheek. "Ailing, you will surely return, just as you have countless times before, right?" Tears glistened in my sister's eyes. She raised her cup toward me from a distance. "If you truly can go back, be careful without me." Darkness fell. I knew not if I would have another opportunity to witness the sunset against the vast sky. Yet, I thought that if there remained even the slightest chance, I would have no regrets. In the fleeting moment when the blade slices through flesh, the trajectory of fate cleaves the dark clouds asunder. I remain uncertain whether this will culminate in a grand redemption or a foolish conflagration. Yet, one truth resonates within me. I know what I desire. I yearn to shed this crimson essence, to exchange it for an unseen cycle of rebirth. I long for those who have been compelled to live as mere ants to be granted another chance at life. I wish for rivers to run clear and seas to be tranquil, for nations to prosper and their people to thrive. I desire majestic landscapes adorned with phoenixes in flight. I wish to erase the sanguine undertones of this era, transforming all sorrow and joy into a sweet aftertaste. I wish to assist the young maiden whose purity has been ravaged, to brush away the frost that clings to her brow. I wish to save her, and countless others. Blood surges from my neck, swirling around me to form a celestial river of time. I behold every cycle, threads shimmering faintly, intertwining with one another. I find myself enveloped in a transparent, yet warm cocoon. Ultimately, all threads converge into one, striking my third eye. I open my eyes and behold a familiar visage, as if a celestial being has indeed descended to earth. I grasp her tightly, disregarding all else. What year is it now? I watch as her crimson lips part, a look of bewilderment gracing her features as she proclaims, "The 35th year of Jingming." In an instant, it feels as though a tempest of snow has ruffled my vision. Jingming, 35th year. I have returned a full cycle of 60 years. To the year 28. At this moment, the Empress Dowager Snow, the Prime Minister's only daughter, Yilingxi, gazes at me with concern. Fanga, are you all right? Why the sudden inquiry? I look at her, my thoughts rapidly awakening.
Fan Yi.
The most trusted confidant of the late Empress, now a martyr. Yilingxi is inherently a gentle soul. The good news is that communication with her will be effortless. The bad news is that we are currently in a carriage. I vividly recall that on the 18th day of the 12th month, she was stripped of her innocence en route to meet the young general, ambushed by bandits. My eyelids suddenly twitch. A glimmer of hope arises as I tentatively inquire. Today cannot possibly be the 18th of the 12th month, can it? Everyone regards me with expressions of incredulity. Another maid raises an eyebrow. What else could it be? My mind hums with realization. Indeed, it is true. We are already on the path beset by bandits. Granting me 60 years of rebirth, yet denying me even a day's respite, this extreme ordeal is not a first. Fang Ji's memories gradually begin to fuse with my own. There are 3 of us in the carriage, Yilingxi, myself, and another close maid, Lingxiang. Ordinarily, the old Prime Minister keeps a tight leash on Yilingxi, forbidding her from venturing out alone. Thus, she has brought 2 attendants along, feigning a trip to the Easter market. However, including the coachman, none possess martial skills, let alone fend off a band of brutish marauders. My head throbs, on the verge of explosion. Faced with this ultimate challenge, I resolve to adopt the most primal method of survival. Miss, my eyelids are twitching uncontrollably. Shall we return? The carriage falls into a tense silence.
Yilingi.
Momentarily taken aback, replies, "This is our last meeting. We cannot renege." I am reluctant. But Lingxiang nudges me with her elbow. "Sister Fanga, why do you seem so mystical today?" Seizing the opportunity, I climb aboard. Perhaps it is divine will. I have a sense that today is fraught with peril. Shall we return and reschedule for another day? Yilingxi interrupts me firmly. If deities truly existed, how could there be so many suffering commoners? I do not believe in gods or Buddhas. As she utters this, her voice is resolute, her bright eyes akin to a pair of radiant pearls. Fongo, rest assured, nothing will happen. After this final meeting, we shall each find peace. Behind her, the remnants of leaves swirl in the snow, painting a silent farewell.
Igesa her.
A wave of melancholy washing over my heart. My lady, you do not believe in deities, even visiting temples merely to deceive others. Are you aware that, in the future, you will be compelled to invoke the guise of the divine to preserve all? There remains roughly half an hour's journey to the temple. It is too late to summon guards now. I grit my teeth. Then, let us test her limits regarding my loyalty as a devoted servant. I suddenly clutch my abdomen and crouch down. Oh dear. They immediately surround me. What is wrong? I wipe the cold sweat from my brow. The carriage is too bumpy.
My stomach is in knots.
May we pause for a moment? The carriage indeed comes to a halt. Yilingxi even lends a hand to rub my belly. However, lingering too long would be unwise. I shift my gaze to Lingxiang. Would you accompany me outside for some fresh air? It will help. Outside the carriage. I squeeze Lingxiang's hand until it reshapes. Lingxiang, listen to me. I had a dream, in which I saw the mist being attacked by bandits today. I was initially skeptical, but in the dream, I too felt the pain in my abdomen. I am nearly in tears. I know you possess some martial skill. Could you hasten back to find Sir and bring assistance? Lingxiang scrutinizes me for a prolonged moment. Before departing, she simply states, I hope this dream is false. A sense of calm finally washes over me. The Yi family is quite united, which is reassuring. Upon returning to the carriage, I inform Yilingxi that Lingxiang has gone back to fetch a physician for my ailment. She anxiously massages my belly for a quarter of an hour. Ultimately, she cannot contain herself any longer. All right, Fongo, bear with it a little longer. Let us rest at the temple soon. I know we cannot prolong this. I can only urge the coachman to slow down, even more slowly, until we hear the thundering hooves of a multitude of fierce steeds. The coachman hastily flings open the curtain. It is bandits. The faces of everyone instantly drain of color. I almost immediately make a decision. Abandon the carriage. The rugged mountain path, though treacherous, offers a glimmer of hope. We swiftly conceal ourselves behind the stones. Yilingxi, startled, I clam my hand over her mouth. I dare not contemplate. If, this time, Yilingxi falls victim to a cruel fate, this 60-year span, the life of this maiden, the destinies of countless souls. What shall I do? I bite my lip and resolutely tear off Yilingxi's outer garment. You. She quickly comprehends my intent, tears welling in her eyes.
No.
You must marry. I restrain her, pulling her floral hairpin from her hair and placing it atop my own, meeting her gaze. I am willing. Yet, I did not anticipate that when the bandits approached, the first to step forward would not be me. The young coachman stands defiantly before the horses. As long as I still draw breath, you shall not lay a finger on the miss. The bandit swiftly cleaves his arm. Hand over your lady, and I shall grant you a swift death. Yet he does not choose an easy demise. He is trampled slowly, piece by piece, by the hooves of the marauders. The scent of blood permeates the air. I grip my own arm tightly. I still have not managed to save everyone. In that instant, the thought of relinquishing my cycle of rebirth crosses my mind. Let me suffer death time and again, despair time and again. Am I truly worthy of redemption? I slowly rise, freeing myself from Yilingxi's grasp. I walk towards the bandits, placing myself in front of the coachman. I am Yilingxi, come at me. As my garments are torn away layer by layer, I admit I am still gripped by fear. I hollowly ponder. If I were Yilingxi, would I possess the courage to endure a lifetime amidst ruins? Perhaps this day would mark the end of my life. I am not as brave as Yilingxi. She surpasses me in courage. And in the next moment, the advancing hand suddenly halts. A warm head rests upon my chest. The resonant voice of the venerable chancellor echoed, declaring, "Annihilate them all." It was only after I had wrapped myself in a warm blanket that the reality struck me. I was saved. The formidable figure of the national master would no longer loom over us, sparing the lives of 300,000 souls. With great effort, I lifted my head and noticed the coachman beside me had become almost unrecognizable. He tightly clutched something in his hand, and I managed to extract it, a fragrant pouch. Memories of Fongo surged forth. This coachman had once served a minor official, enduring daily humiliation at the hands of a debauched young master. It was Yilingxi who had thrown him a fragrant pouch, altering the course of his fate. Later, that official's household was raided, and his belongings auctioned off by the authorities. The coachman spent most of his savings to redeem that pouch, proclaiming, "It was the young lady who granted me this life." The wind and snow fell silently, as if in acknowledgement. Yilingxi would no longer need to masquerade as a divine being, yet in the hearts of many, she was already revered as a true deity. Upon our return, the three of us were confined together in the inner courtyard. The old chancellor imposed a 3-month house arrest upon us and confiscated my and Lingxiang's monthly allowances. Such leniency was due, in part, to our rescue of the young lady, balancing our transgressions with our merits. Additionally, I had suffered from a high fever for several days, and everyone was aware of the ordeal I had narrowly escaped, treating me with great care. However, Yilingxi seemed to be suffering even more gravely than I. After returning home, she ceased to speak altogether.
We all understood the reason why.
On that fateful day, the young general had not made an appearance. In the aftermath, he had sent no correspondence, distancing himself entirely. This was for the best, I thought. Like in a previous life, her celestial moon had cracked. Thus, my most pressing task was to ensure the young general's survival. In my former life, the young general had similarly kept his distance, offering no explanations, and was subsequently sent away, meeting an untimely demise. He became the perpetual crescent moon in Yilingxi's heart, a lifelong obsession. This time, I was determined to keep him alive in Yilingxi's eyes and heart. Fragmented yet whole. Only then could her heart be truly salvaged. However, such matters were beyond my solitary capacity. I could only implore the Chancellor to do everything in his power to prevent the young general's reassignment. Given the Chancellor's love for his only daughter, I believed it should not be an insurmountable task. Yet I found myself thwarted at the first hurdle. The errand boy returned for the 5th time with the message, "The master has declared that, under no circumstances, will he release you." Pleas for clemency are futile. No matter how I explained, the Chancellor remained unconvinced that my intentions were of grave importance, dismissing them as mere whims of the young lady trying to charm him. I was beside myself with anxiety. Just then, rumors began to circulate throughout the capital, alleging that Yilingxi had been violated by bandits. I nearly overturned the medicine bowl in shock. The fact that such news had reached the inner courtyard indicated that it was common knowledge. This event had never transpired. An alarming thought struck me. If, as my sister had suggested, the bandits and the rumors were part of a meticulously orchestrated scheme, then the tragic arc of a woman's joys and sorrows intertwined with the decline of a dynasty, could it truly be that every step was calculated? The Chancellor had evidently come to a similar realization. He summoned someone to find me. As soon as I stepped into his study, he wasted no time. Did anything seem amiss that day? I took a bold approach, kneeling before him. I suspect that the young general conspired with an influential figure, attempting to undermine the prospective princess. Instantly, all the servants fell to their knees. The Chancellor hurled his teacup at me, exclaiming, "What blasphemous words are you uttering? Have you lost your mind, not knowing the consequences of slandering nobility?" I pressed my forehead to the ground in silence. After a prolonged moment, the venerable Chancellor regained his composure and dismissed everyone else. "You mentioned a conspiracy. What did you discover?" I maintained my kneeling position. On the way back that day, feeling dizzy, I lifted the curtain for fresh air, only to find the common folk by the roadside wearing hostile expressions, whispering and pointing. The situation was, of course, fabricated. But it mattered little. I continued to weave my tale. Surely, arrangements had already been made then, waiting for the young lady to be humiliated so that rumors could spread, leaving the entire Chancellor's household without respite. After a long silence, the Chancellor's voice seemed to age further. "Stand and speak." I rose, gazing at his contemplative visage. Yilingxi was his only daughter. I could only imagine the profound blow this would have dealt him in a previous life. Seizing the moment, I pressed on. "I humbly request one thing from you, my lord. Speak freely." I lifted my gaze, speaking earnestly. I had yet another dream yesterday. In this dream, the young general was suddenly reassigned and met an untimely death under mysterious circumstances. The Chancellor paused, his teacup trembling in his hand, spilling its contents. During the last rescue, I had used dreams as a pretext to secure my survival. The young lady and the general share a bond. Their inability to meet or clarify matters means the young general's death will haunt the young lady for life. She will be melancholic, unable to find peace. Observing that the Chancellor did not reprimand me, I knelt again, pressing my forehead to the ground until blood welled up. "I implore you, my lord, at this critical juncture, you must ensure that the young general does not perish." The old Chancellor, a man of remarkable acumen, did not trust me, yet he quickly grasped the situation. "I see now. The matter of rumors is not insurmountable. I shall handle it." He clapped his hands, instructing servants to bring forth several property deeds. "Your contribution is invaluable. Take this time to recuperate. When the Emperor issues orders for the reassignment of military officers, I will intercede. However, you must persuade Lingxi to abandon all notions of the young general and accept her identity as the prospective princess." I nodded in agreement. As I stepped out, he called me back. "You need not secretly read Lingxi's books anymore. You are permitted to serve as her companion reader, while also keeping an eye on her. Remember, tread carefully." Joy surged within me. I was indeed quite proficient in my studies, being a legitimate daughter of an official family. Yet, this opportunity presented a chance for deeper engagement and understanding of the current elite in the capital. After a fortnight of recuperation, the Chancellor lifted our house arrest. The trajectory of the young general's fate also shifted. This time, he did not die, nor did he feign death. Remaining in the capital, he began seeking ways to send messages and request meetings. The contrast with his previous silence was stark. The Chancellor, realizing that this final encounter should be encouraged rather than obstructed, did not intervene further, only increasing the presence of covert guards. However, Yilingxi chose not to meet him this time. This was not a negative development. The distinction between choosing not to meet and being unable to meet was vast. Perhaps after these days of reflection, the weight of that youthful, radiant moonlight had subtly altered. Subsequently, I began accompanying Yi Lingxi into the palace for regular study sessions as her reading companion. The noble young ladies convened in the Ziyuan Hall, where the crown prince's tutor personally instructed them. Such an environment was rife with rivalry. The noble women engaged in secret comparisons of garments and jewelry, or banded together to belittle the daughters of minor officials. Previously, Yi Lingxi had been the center of admiration, as the chancellor ranked just beneath the emperor. Yet now, having fallen victim to rumors, she faced isolation. Some audacious individuals even dared to whisper behind her back. They were adept at reading the winds and shifting their allegiances. To this, I remained noncommittal, even finding it somewhat amusing. Yi Lingxi was capable of devising the divine maiden narrative even in dire circumstances, having ascended to the pinnacle of female power. If she could not withstand such trivial adversity, there would be no merit in my intervention. Initially, Yi Lingxi paid them no mind, continuing her studies, maintaining her appearance, and engaging in spirited debates with the tutor over the Confucian classics. I gradually gleaned the intricate dynamics of the official families, only to find that some unwitting individuals had indeed become pawns in this unfolding drama. A daughter of a minister pointed her finger directly at Yi Lingxi's nose and declared, "How dare you, a woman of sullied virtue, defile the halls of female scholarship?" The hall instantly fell into silence. As a sycophant, I opened my mouth, ready to retort, but was swiftly silenced.
Yi Lingxi similek nonchalantly.
Lifting her hand to grasp the girl by the throat. "If you have no use for your eyes, shall I assist you in gouging them out to feed the dogs?" Others attempted to intervene, only to receive 2 swift slaps from her. "Did your father instruct you to speak such words?" "So, the Vice Minister of Justice has long harbored discontent towards the Chancellor, has he not? Or are you merely intent on ruining my fate to seize it for yourself?" With just a few light words, she cast grave accusations, the implications of which could lead to loss of office and confiscation of property. Soon, those of lower rank began to steer clear of her. For the first time, I witnessed the vibrant essence of Yi Lingxi. She was once such a spirited young woman, unperturbed by external influences. Had she not been ensnared by her own obsessions, she could have lived a life of unrestrained elegance. After her display of authority, no one dared to offend her again. The Chancellor finally quelled the rumors, severely punishing several instigators and striking hard at the forces behind them. Life grew increasingly smooth, and even many young ladies from noble families began to curry favor with me. Is this the feeling of being a sycophant? Quite pleasant indeed. Overall, life became more comfortable, except for a small faction, which continued to subtly undermine us. Among them was none other than the younger sister of the young general, Qin Shining. I initially thought her ire towards Yi Lingxi stemmed from the latter's recent treatment of her brother, a mere outlet for her frustrations. Until that day, behind the artificial mountain, I witnessed Qin Shining bowing to another woman, her demeanor obsequious. This woman was the daughter of the Minister of War, who would later become the Crown Prince's consort. This scene sent a chill down my spine. I tucked my skirt tightly around my legs and fled silently. If discovered, my clandestine observation would lead to dire consequences. Once outside, my heart raced nearly beyond endurance. Meanwhile, a series of thoughts began to align in my mind. The young general had been notably absent during the critical confrontation with the bandits. Shortly thereafter, he was abruptly reassigned by the emperor. A scion of a martial family, skilled in combat, met an inexplicable demise on the road. If all these events were interconnected, my palms grew clammy, nearly unable to hold my handkerchief. It truly was the Crown Prince. The Qin family had long since aligned themselves with the Crown Prince's faction, aiding in the struggle against the Crown Prince's rival for the throne. And Yi Lingxi, as a phoenix destined for the throne, was in peril. I feared that the young general, who later met his untimely end, was merely a pawn used to gravely wound the future Crown Princess, both physically and psychologically. The Crown Prince conspired with military leaders to orchestrate the downfall of the prospective Crown Princess. I clamped my hand over my mouth. In the ensuing years, countless corpses piled high, the court was thrown into turmoil, and innocent lives were lost. All of this had long been foreshadowed. I suddenly felt immense relief, grateful that I had managed to alert the Chancellor and prevent the reassignment. Had I recklessly acted on my own accord, the consequences would have been unimaginable. I spent the night forcing myself to regain my composure. Such grave matters could not be directly exposed. The Qin family outwardly maintained their loyalty to the throne, refraining from any involvement in disputes. Manipulating public sentiment, indeed, is the most astute form of power play. I needed evidence. The last incident had compelled the Chancellor to act, but without proof, regardless of whether he believed me this time, he would suspect ulterior motives. I observed the Ji Yuan Hall for several days, finally awaiting my opportunity. On this day, while Yi Lingxi discussed an article with the Grand Tutor, Qin Shining coldly interjected with a few barbed comments. In matters of scholarship, Yi Lingxi never conceded, and soon their exchange escalated into a quarrel. Such incidents occurred every few days, but this time, I stoked the flames. With arms crossed, I scrutinized Qin Shining with a sycophantic air, repeatedly aggressive. No wonder you remain unmarried. Well, the daughter of a martial family certainly had a fiery temperament. She swung her fist to strike me. Given my current position, I could not retaliate. I tackled her to the ground. Do not lay a hand on my lady. The scene devolved into chaos. Qin Shining kicked and hit me, while I stealthily tugged at her hair. Ultimately, the Grand Tutor, in a fit of anger, ordered everyone to leave. You may wonder what this incident had to do with the Crown Prince. Absolutely nothing. However, when the Chancellor chastised me in front of Yi Lingxi for my lack of decorum that day, I opened my palm. There, quietly rested a half-broken hairpin. I respectfully presented it to the Chancellor. This was inadvertently taken from Miss Qin's head. Might the esteemed sir recognize this material? The old Chancellor examined the hairpin closely. You question me about a young lady's trinket? The outer layer is merely ordinary white jade. The inner layer has a hint of pink, which should be in the next moment. Everyone's expression shifted. Yi Lingxi, gripping the tea table, nearly toppled over. Is it hibiscus jade? The old Chancellor, equally astonished, faltered in his speech. Hibiscus jade is exclusively produced in Hibiscus County, with the finest specimens offered only to the palace. Very few are released to the outside world, and those are of inferior quality. And this Hibiscus County, I completed the unspoken thought, is the fief of the Crown Prince. The old Chancellor downed his cup of tea in one gulp. Indeed. Thanks to that plum blossom hairpin, I instantly recognized the material of hibiscus jade. Unlike 60 years later, at this time, hibiscus jade was exceedingly rare and precious. Everyone knew that, aside from the high-ranking ladies in the palace, only one person outside the palace possessed a complete set of hibiscus jade adornments, the prospective crown princess. Yet Qin Shining possessed such a precious hairpin, concealing the hibiscus jade within ordinary white jade to wear discreetly. There could only be one explanation. The crown prince or the future crown princess had already secretly allied with the Qin family. Yi Lingxi remained silent for many days thereafter. How astute she was. She merely had been unwilling to contemplate it before. Unwilling to ponder why the young general, despite knowing of her destined fate, disregarded her reputation and exchanged affections with her. Unwilling to consider why he professed to protect her for a lifetime while allowing his sister to target her. Not to mention that day, why he had failed to keep his crucial appointment. The answer was one she would have to accept herself. Yi Lingxi isolated herself for 10 days. After 10 days, it was the first month of the year. Amid the cacophony of firecrackers, she opened the door, stepping onto the stone path strewn with fallen red petals. She engaged in a rare heart-to-heart with her father. I have come to a realization. I am indeed destined as the phoenix, though there is no formal engagement. I ought not to be emotionally invested in any man other than the crown prince. She picked up a brush and composed a farewell letter on the spot. Observing her graceful writing, both the Chancellor and I grew apprehensive. Are you truly certain you do not wish to see him one last time, to resolve your feelings? She smiled as she folded the farewell letter. Having genuinely loved during the prime of youth is already sufficient. Yet I could see that beneath the paper, her hand trembled. The young general's betrayal weighed heavily upon her, so heavy that it intertwined with the fate of the nation, destined to transform them into adversaries. The Chancellor sighed. Were I in her position, I too would find it unbearable. She was far stronger than I. Yet a lingering discontent gnawed at me. Her brow had not thawed. She did not truly believe and accept the young general's betrayal. She merely perceived that they had been forced to take opposing sides. She had not relinquished her love. She had simply chosen to sacrifice her feelings for the greater good of her country. This was not right. What essential difference is there between this life and the last? I yearned to rescue her, to save her utterly. After much contemplation, I concluded that she must meet the young general. It is imperative to bring along more of our covert guards. A meeting must occur. The one who ties the bell must be the one to untie it. She must comprehend that the young general's love for her is, in itself, less than pure. Throughout the entire spring festival, I pondered this matter, descending into a state of obsession. In subsequent reflections upon that day, I still feel an overwhelming sense of peril and immense regret. It was undeniably a glaring trap, yet I dragged her into it. I was aware that the young general occasionally frequented the pleasure houses. These noble scions, while courting the daughters of high-ranking families, would also indulge in merriment within the brothels, their pursuits remaining unaffected by one another. Naturally, Yilingsi was oblivious to this, and even if she heard rumors, she would not believe them. Thus, when an informant reported on the Lantern Festival that the young general had visited a pleasure house, I disguised Yilingsi and hurried there. Of course, I did not forget to inform the Prime Minister. He understood my intentions and waved away nearly all of the guards in the residence. I wanted Yilingsi to witness that, even setting aside national righteousness, the young general is not a paragon of virtue. However, once inside the pleasure house, my eyelids began to twitch uncontrollably. Details that had been overlooked clamored for attention. I clenched my sleeves, my unease amplifying. The moment I laid eyes on the person before me, my anxiety reached its zenith. The equally disguised Qin Shining wore a scornful expression. What a twist of fate. The future princess consort has come to listen to music? I immediately sensed something amiss. May I inquire where the young General Qin is? Qin Shining did not respond to me, but continued to target Yilingsi. What gives you the right to see my brother? Did you not refuse to meet him before? Why the sudden eagerness now? Yilingsi's expression remained unchanged. Is he here? What does it matter to you? Even if my brother entertains 3 women at night, what can you do about it? Let me tell you.
Yelingi abruptly says at winning.
The latter's expression turned to one of evident panic. What are you doing? Did I strike a nerve? You cannot act this way. Which room is your brother in? Is it joy of reunion or peaceful melody? Yilingsi lifted her foot, intent on ascending the stairs. I will find him myself. In that moment, I finally recognized the anomaly. Based on Qin Shining's usual demeanor, she harbored animosity towards her brother's beloved and would undoubtedly wish to sever their bond. Thus, she should have encouraged Yilingsi to encounter him in the pleasure house, instigating conflict between them. Yet her behavior suggested a reluctance to allow us to meet the young General Qin. Only one possibility remained. When Qin Shining anxiously grasped us, Yilingsi simultaneously voiced the conclusion. Your brother is not here, is he?
But why?
You've lured us here for so long. What is your intention? Qin Shining finally ceased her movements. A smile appeared on her face, one I had never witnessed before. Yilingsi, you cannot fathom how envious I am of you. But that was in the past. In an instant, something detonated within my mind. I nearly shouted. All guards, return to the residence to protect the Prime Minister. Yilingsi understood as well, luring the tiger from its lair. I seized Yilingsi, flagging down a horse and tossing down some silver as we rode back. I had never been so frightened. If the Prime Minister were assassinated by the Crown Prince's men, the lightest consequence would be the revelation of Yilingsi's secret rendezvous at the pleasure house. It would become an indelible stain. Subsequently, the Crown Prince's faction would suffer a devastating blow, and the political landscape would become unpredictable. She and everyone else would revert to a frozen state of despair. This cycle may be our last chance. I dared not think further. The root of all this lay in the struggle for the throne. Everyone, every relationship and destiny, all joy and sorrow, even my own reincarnations, converged at a singular point. Power. Suddenly, I felt suffocated. Yet time did not grant me the luxury of thought. Upon returning to the Prime Minister's residence, the inner courtyard was surrounded by hundreds of covert guards. Yilingsi nearly vomited blood. Father, the most loyal steward of the residence, lay on the ground, grievously wounded, like a rag doll. At the end of the blood trail was the old Prime Minister, visibly beaten and bound. Yilingsi raised her hand in anguish. Kill them all. But I surveyed our surroundings. Who brought you here? The crown prince? Or? The next moment, darkness engulfed me. A heavy hand struck my neck. When I regained my senses, I found myself bound and cast beside the prime minister. Yi Lingxi was held hostage, a dagger pressed against her throat. The captor was none other than the long-absent young General Qin Xian. I dared not glimpse Yi Lingxi's expression in the shadows. Qin Xian, with Yi Lingxi in his grasp, was negotiating with the old prime minister. I still have feelings for Lingxi. As long as you take your own life, I will not harm her in the slightest. Yi Lingxi cried out, "How dare you?" But was interrupted by the prime minister, whose tone was leisurely as if he were not bound and lying on the ground, but rather seated comfortably at a table sipping tea. Taking my own life is acceptable, but I would like to die with clarity. May I ask you a few questions? For some reason, hearing the prime minister's calm voice brought me a sense of reassurance. Qin Xian's hand holding the dagger did not waver. Go ahead. When did your family, the Qins, begin to align with the crown prince? Qin Xian lowered his gaze. From the moment Lingxi was given the decree of the phoenix, I suddenly raised my head. Moreover, my father misappropriated military funds, which the crown prince discovered. We had no choice. The prime minister's thoughts raced faster than mine. Yet even if the crown prince becomes emperor, Lingxi would never marry you. Why would you? At this point, it was as if a thunderbolt shattered my consciousness. So, the bandits were your doing. Yi Lingxi's tears finally fell. From the very beginning, you harbored ulterior motives towards me. Qin Xian momentarily faltered. No, Lingxi, my feelings for you are genuine. But you are the Phoenix Decree, and I cannot marry you. It is the crown prince who offered me the opportunity. He said that once the coup succeeds, he would bestow you upon me. I understood. He intended to use the bandits to tarnish Yi Lingxi's purity, deal a blow to the prime minister and the crown prince's faction. Then, should the crown prince's plan succeed, he would use Yi Lingxi's compromised virtue as a pretext to strip her of her status as the crown princess and bestow her upon Qin Xian. Everything would fall into place, yet no one cared about the tragic fate of a girl turned into a political pawn, her joys and sorrows disregarded. Yi Lingxi posed the same question. So your feelings for me are genuine, yet you wish to destroy my purity, my reputation, and the fate of my entire family? Qin Xian embraced her tightly. I do not care about your purity. Lingxi, being together is enough for us, is it not? I felt a twitch at the corner of my mouth. What a deft evasion of the issue. In essence, he treated women merely as accessories.
Yelingi cehaset her hairpin.
She lifted her head, and I could not discern her expression. Marry me and then what? Will you bring home your courtesan from the pleasure house as a concubine, so that I may serve you alongside her?
How could that be?
Qin Xian blurted out. I could never bring such a woman into my household. The world suddenly fell silent. I watched as the snow fell silently outside the window. The pure white settled on the ground, rotting and melting, emitting a hissing sound. Yi Lingxi's youthful radiance, too, in that moment, utterly decayed. You see, this is your innermost thought. Yi Lingxi rested her chin upon the shoulder of the young general, declaring, a worn-out shoe, ridden by thousands, is unworthy of you. The destroyed version of me would be no different. At an angle where he could not see, she withdrew the sharp hairpin from her head. Qin Xian, you truly have not uttered a single honest word. In the next moment, the dagger in Qin Xian's hand clattered to the ground. The sound of flesh being pierced resonated. Yi Lingxi plunged the hairpin deep into Qin Xian's neck. Fortunately, the person I admire is not one like you. At this juncture, the prime minister shouted, fire arrows, kill, without mercy. Suddenly, countless archers appeared in the outer courtyard. A dense array of arrows reflected a fierce light. Layer upon layer, they formed countless circles in the air. I felt as if numerous cycles converged into a single point, drawing an invisible line that led to Qin Xian, the one who had ruined Yi Lingxi's life and the fate of the entire dynasty. Finally, at this moment, a rain of arrows pierced through the heart. Dozens had already emerged from the concealed chambers of the study, shielding us with their shields. Dusk descended precisely at this moment. In the capital during the Lantern Festival, brilliant fireworks ascended into the night sky. Crackling sounds filled the air, and it felt as though the world had paused. A golden rain enveloped the entire realm. At this moment, I finally beheld the prosperous world I had longed for. The ice melted, the snow dissipated, and the landscape was picturesque. The girl caught in the whirlpool of fate finally emerged from the storm. Reporting to the Prime Minister, there are no survivors outside the courtyard. A creaking sound emanated from behind. A man clad in a dragon robe slowly stepped forward. Both Yi Lingxi and I were taken aback, quickly dropping to our knees. Yet the old Prime Minister remained unfazed, reporting to Your Majesty, the witness is dead. The Emperor spoke with calm composure. Issue the order. The eldest prince has committed treason. Seize the entire estate. If there is resistance, execute on the spot. Silence enveloped the room. However, I knew that many had already mobilized from the unseen shadows. Once, there was a national master who, due to leaking alchemical materials, poisoned 30,000 people. Once, there was a prince who, in his quest to nurture an army, plundered the people's resources, leaving the populace in a state of starvation. Once, there was a palace coup that resulted in mountains of corpses. But from this day forth, the past shall no longer persist. There will no longer be a girl who kneels and bows to secure her purity and her family's fate. She will not be shackled by obsession, waiting indefinitely for a moment that may never come. She can finally age gracefully, like many others who find happiness. The concluding tasks progressed exceptionally smoothly. Under the Emperor's intervention, rumors dissipated entirely. After Yi Lingxi personally took the life of her former beloved, she also eradicated the shadows of her past. Frankly speaking, she had become quite adept at the technique of piercing the neck with a hairpin since childhood. I began to sense more strongly that my departure was imminent. Yi Lingxi was remarkably astute. She had sensed something amiss from the very beginning. You are not Feng Ge, are you? I opened my mouth, but found myself at a loss for words. She grasped my hand and seated me, igniting a warm candlelight. Come now. Although I do not know your name, we have an entire night to talk.
All right.
I divulged all the significant matters to her, from the origins of the past to the potential crises that may arise in the future. From the flickering candlelight to the break of dawn, the wick crackled, and I heard the sound of different worlds merging into one. Everything I know has been shared with you, my lady. Is that true? Of course, not everything was entirely truthful. I occasionally recalled that day when the old Prime Minister assisted Yi Lingxi out of the study. Behind them, the young General Qin stirred with great effort. With his last breath, he pulled a book from his bosom, raising his hand with difficulty. For Lingxi, that was their token of love. I sighed. Ultimately, he had loved. I accepted the book. You may rest easy now. Then, in his gaze, I retrieved a fire starter. After igniting it, I tossed it back into his embrace. She no longer needs it. I turned and departed, the flames gradually consuming him. However, such trivial details need not be elaborated upon, right? My memory fails me. I cannot retain it all. After an intimate conversation with Yi Lingxi, I felt my body growing lighter. I understood that my mission was complete. Yi Lingxi sensed it keenly as well. She held my hand. We will surely meet again in the future, right? Tears welled in my eyes. We certainly will. Perhaps. As time passes, I will no longer be myself, nor will I bear the same name. But I believe you will find me. Please, protect this world, and as many people as you can. And I smirked mischievously. The Crown Prince is truly quite a good person. She blushed once more. I waved my hand. See you in 60 years, Yi Lingxi. A flash of white light reappeared, and the world spun. I fell from the sky, spilling tea onto the table. Ling, what is the matter with you? After conversing for an entire night, another night followed. However, this time it was a duet of 2 against 2, my sister and I versus our parents. My sister synchronized her memories again, even including recollections from 60 years past, which made explanations considerably simpler. We had thought that it would take our parents a long time to accept the existence of these matters. But after we both spoke in haste, the 2 elders were reduced to tears. Our mother embraced me tightly. Our daughter has endured so much suffering. She then promptly delivered a light slap to my father. You need to work harder, letting the children take the lead. At your age, you should be paving the way for your daughters. We laughed and cried. Then I began to inquire about the current situation. Do not worry, you have saved this dynasty. The current Empress Dowager seems like an entirely different person. Indeed, the whole world knows she is a kind and compassionate elder. The late emperor treated the Empress Dowager exceptionally well. They bore a son and a daughter, and the late emperor even vacated the harem for her. He believed that having only one son would eliminate disputes over succession, reducing many troubles. The emperor is no longer of the same temperament. No one disputes that he is a wise ruler. The people live in peace and contentment, and everything has improved. You would not believe it. Now all women can participate in the imperial examinations. Indeed. By the way, our mother met them once when she was conferred a title in her early years. At that time, she was still the empress. I observed that she was deeply in love with her husband. They were inseparable. How wonderful! I shed tears once more. Exhausted from the conversation, I prepared to pour new tea for my parents. My sister preemptively seized the teapot. Father must be thirsty. Here, have a cup of tea. Once again, she took delight in teasing me. But against the backdrop of peace and harmony, this was merely a seasoning of our happy life. On the scroll, there were no longer any shades of red. The nation and beauties, both exquisite in their charms. The following day, my sister and I went to a rouge shop to buy new powder for our puffy eyes. We argued again in the shop. Upon returning home, the steward of the palace, Eunuch Su, awaited us with a respectful demeanor. The Empress Dowager wishes to see the two young ladies. In Shokong Palace, a white-haired, yet kind-faced elder helped us up.
Get up, sit down.
We felt an immediate sense of familiarity. Beside her sat another elder of the same age. She nodded. I am Fong Ge. My visions suddenly blurred once more. The Empress Dowager presented me with a handkerchief, her countenance radiant with a smile. I believe we four shall have much to converse about. End of main text. Epilogue. On the day of Yan Junling's departure, Yi Lingxi presumed she would be unable to find solace in sleep. Yet, she was enveloped in a dream. She beheld her former self in a past life. It was a remarkable sensation. Though her consciousness was astutely aware, she could not rouse herself. When listening to Yan Junling recount her own tragedy, she had felt no sense of immersion. Yet at that moment, witnessing her past self being torn asunder by bandits, it felt akin to plunging into the abyss of the ocean. She fought desperately against the void, imploring the bandits, "Release me." Yet she could only observe herself, reduced to a mere puddle of despair. Why could she not see? That man had never possessed true sincerity. Yet she had wagered her entire existence for him. She watched her former self transform after becoming pregnant, as if she had morphed into an entirely different person. She began to regard everyone with suspicion, including her own father. Had it not been for him, how could she have borne the burden of the phoenix's fate? Fear blossomed within her. If her father were to discover the truth, would he abandon her as well? She reached a decision. On the day of the first snow in the capital, at the sacrificial altar, she donned a delicate white dress and bowed with every step, using mechanisms of her own design to declare her identity as a goddess. The wind and snow encircled her, forming a still circle around her. From that moment forth, she could never escape that circle. The flickering candlelight on the altar cast shadows. Heavily pregnant, she wed her destined husband. Suddenly, she recalled Yan Junling's words. How could she have failed to realize? She played the role of a goddess, extinguishing the national master. She believed she had not wronged anyone apart from that wayward child. Yet she had inflicted the deepest wounds upon her closest companion. She witnessed the night her honor was sullied, as Prince Zhao Huishua sat in his study, tears streaming down his face for an entire night. She observed the rumors swirling, and the usually gentle man, for once, shatter a cup in anger. Lingxi is blessed by the spirits of heaven and earth with pregnancy. Who dares to spread rumors? Let them be sent to the Dali temple. She saw them share the same bed, spent a sleepless night, her tears soaking her nightgown. Behind her, he quietly reached out, brushing against her icy hair, yet dared not advance further. The following day, she slept until the sun was high. He, however, donned a facade of vigor, concealing the dark circles under his eyes as he attended court. When their child was born, he beamed with joy, yet upon witnessing her sorrowful expression, his smile abruptly faded. The populace spoke of them as an exemplary emperor and empress. Yet she had allowed a man who truly loved her to harbor regrets for a lifetime. A century of marriage, growing old together, mutual respect, yet they had never truly known one another. Why not take a chance? She pondered. Why not attempt to at least not disappoint the person before her? Upon awakening the next day, she unusually adorned herself in full makeup. The carriage halted at the Eastern Palace. She smiled gently, her eyes sparkling like stars. "Might His Highness, the Prince, grant me a cup of tea?" A sudden sound echoed, the prince's book slipping from his hands. He fumbled to adjust his disheveled hairpiece. "Ah, it is Miss Yilingsi. Yes, yes. I shall brew tea at once." Foolish boy. He could hardly suppress his grin. She surveyed the vibrant spring scenery, reflecting that residing here was not so bad after all. After all, he did not take concubines. It was still better than that Qin Xian. Let love blossom after marriage. 3 years later, the emperor passed away. She was adorned with a phoenix crown and bridal attire by his own hands. During the coronation ceremony, fatigue weighed heavily upon her, nearly preventing her from standing upright. That insufferable man sought to wear her out further. She helplessly pushed away his wandering hand. The most esteemed man in the realm instantly transformed into a cast-off pup. Thus, she revealed the truth to him. "I am with child. It is unwise to share a bed." Have you ever witnessed an emperor jogging at night? A man clad in bright yellow nightwear, running 3 laps in the imperial garden, calling out, "I am to be a father." The palace attendants chased after him, cloaks in hand.
Foolish man.
The husband he inherited was the ruler of a peaceful era. In the past, he could not reverse the tide of turmoil. Fortunately, tranquility persisted, allowing him to relish all the happiness life offered. They were blessed with a son and a daughter.
Subsequently,
he consumed a potion that would prevent Yilingsi from conceiving again. He declared that this would eliminate any contention for the heir, a splendid notion. Thereafter, they dedicated themselves to improving the lives of the populace, remedying the issues Yan Junling had once mentioned. There was one matter she kept from others. She had dispatched many to discreetly monitor the trajectory of the Minister of Revenue's family, striving to ensure that the girl named Yan Junling was born into this world. She longed to see her once more. A friend across the years would surely feel like an old acquaintance. Days turned into months, and seasons passed. On the day of the first snow that year, as dawn broke softly, news of the old chancellor's grave illness reached them. The emperor and empress personally went to visit him. The old chancellor had no sons. The Yi family was destined for decline. Thus, he sought to touch the highest pinnacle of power available to a minister within his brief existence. In truth, he succeeded. He anticipated the strategy of luring the tiger away from its mountain lair and successfully eliminated the eldest prince, placing himself truly beneath one man. Yet even he could not have foreseen that from the moment he fabricated the phoenix destiny, every step thereafter would be fraught with miscalculation. Fortunately, someone intervened, restoring everything to its rightful path. In that moment, Yilingsi thought to herself that she bore him no grudge. Yet, she never imagined that her father, on his deathbed, would produce a decree. The late emperor once secretly divined the fate of the nation. The master foretold that a girl born on the 6th day of the 6th lunar month would influence the fortune of the realm for 60 years. Thus, Lingxi, upon your birth, the late emperor declared that you would be the only rightful consort for the crown prince. Lingxi, you are not merely of phoenix destiny. Who you marry will determine the true heir. Thus, everything began with her. Every action she took would tug at the hearts of all the princes. Thus, her very existence was steeped in intrigue. This matter will undoubtedly impact the succession struggle. Initially, I intended to wait for the late emperor to personally bestow a marriage proposal. But when I saw you laughing and discussing the 4 books and 5 classics with the eldest prince at Ziyuan Hall, I was filled with anxiety. It was then that I decided to release the news of the Phoenix destiny. However, he left the rest unsaid. Yet he had not anticipated that Yi Lingxi and the eldest prince had no connection, but rather, she had fallen in love with Qin Xian. Yi Lingxi, clutching the decree, found herself at a loss for words. Father and daughter reconciled at the final moment. Tears streamed down her face as she closed the old chancellor's eyes. Father. In this lifetime, she had often mused, if only she could return to the beginning, before she was bestowed with the Phoenix destiny. Would everything not be perfect? Yet, It turned out that this was already the most perfect outcome. Yan Junling had said that it was Yi Lingxi who later provided her with a path to life. But in truth, it was Yan Junling who saved everyone, including herself. Yi Lingxi had once been skeptical of deities and spirits. Yet in the years that followed, she came to realize that she had long since found her own goddess. The entirety of the text is concluded. Thank you for your attention. Until we meet again in the next tale.